Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Java Chat. We have a great guest today. I'm going to have a good time with this guy because we're going to be talking about some pretty important stuff when it comes to things like leadership, which is one of my favorite subjects, and how to manage burnout, which right now, more than anything else, I think is a serious concern. But first, everybody, let's take a quick drink and welcome our guest today, Mr. David Char. Thanks for joining us, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna. What we do usually, Dave, is we hang out with our friends, of which you've just become one, and we like to have our friends introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their background, what they do, what they've done, where they're headed, things of that nature. So, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give us a little introduction, that'd be awesome.
Sure. So my name's David Char. I have a company called Illuminate Performance Management Consultants. So right now I'm once Corona hit, but yeah. So first of all, love being here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is David Char. I have an organization called Illuminate Performance Management Consultants, or Illuminate PMC. And what I do is I go out and consult and speak on issues related to leadership, burnout, and building meaningful work. The way I got to this is I took a pretty circuitous route. I started in ice cream.
Oh my gosh, really? That's awesome.
Specifically working with underprivileged kids in Baltimore City, coming from neighborhoods not unlike what you see in The Wire, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I thought I was getting in the ice cream business. Very quickly realized I was in the people business, as we all are. And it piqued my curiosity about all these things. Leadership, why were these kids finding meaning in scooping ice cream while my friends who were doctors, lawyers, accountants, real estate agents were dreading going to work on Monday.
Right.
So where I stand today is with one foot in practice and one foot in academia. And it's a very interesting place to be because each of those realms has their blind spots. And I try to be a translator between the two.
It's an interesting place to be too, because you realize that you have control of a lot of information when it comes down to translating between one side and the other. You mentioned, of course, I'm gonna ask, ice cream. Really, dude?
Yeah. So
what caused that? I mean, how did you decide to get into ice cream in the first place?
Right, especially in Baltimore where it's cold half the year.
Thank you.
If I was in Vegas with you, that'd be different.
Oh, it'd be year round, brother.
that would have, if I had my business sense, that's where I would have opened up. No, so I had this opportunity come up right at the end of my college career, and I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah.
It was, I'm not going to name the franchise, but it was one where we sang for tips and for every other excuse. So it was real goofy, really goofy kind of franchise. And
that sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah, and loved it. We used to throw ice cream in the air.
What?
And things like that. It was all about the show, the experience.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's what it became for my crew and I. It was more than just about the ice cream. It was about improving people's day. Being an ice cream guy, it's like non-alcoholic, being a non-alcoholic bartender.
Yeah.
People come and get ice cream when they're having a great time or when they're upset.
Yeah.
And we're there to talk to them.
So there's an interesting question. They come to you either happy or upset. Which one did you find more of?
Yeah. So there were a couple people where I was like, I need to make a living here, but really maybe I should cut this person off. Because sometimes I felt less like a bartender and more like a crack dealer. Like it becomes like some people just have a real problem as they're coming in, But for the most part, it was really sweet. Like we would have such a mix of people. We'd have kids coming in to celebrate their soccer match win.
Right.
And I remember the day we had a widow come in. She started crying because the song that was playing was her and her husband's song.
Oh my goodness.
And so there were so many real and raw moments
Oh yeah.
between us and our customers, and me and my employees with each other, that it was just such a humanized workplace, and that's something that's missing out there.
I would tend to agree. It's especially with what's gone through, and we'll get more into that in a bit, especially what this country in particular has gone through the last 4 or 5 months. There seems to be a lack of empathy and a lot of dehumanizing happening. So one of the things that I guess seems really surprising to me, and I've never thought about it before, but an ice cream parlor could absolutely become like the bar. And the first thing, of course, we started talking about that being the bartender. SpongeBob hits my head because of that, the SpongeBob movie, because of that. No, waiter, which you never really think about it like that, but you really can have touching human moments between you and a customer, almost in anything that's service-based like that. Wouldn't you think? Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think people often, our view of work has become so skewed.
Oh boy,
and it's kind
that's an understatement.
It's kind of sad because work has become a means to an end. Right as we were, as a society, getting to a point where work could be so much more, it started becoming just the rat race toward the payout. And actually, at my ice cream parlor, I had a contract that I don't know how enforceable it would be. And, with my HR background, I'm thinking ADA issues and things like that. But you were not allowed to come to work in a bad mood. And
that's cool.
And you had to guarantee me that the day that payday became the most exciting day of your week was the day you had to resign. And I had one person in 7 or 8 years take me up on that and came to me and said, I've been here a long time. I just feel like, I'm more excited about payday than any other day I've got out of my resignation.
Yeah, but that's, there's nothing wrong with having an agreement that you're coming to work because you want to be there. I mean, this is something that we hear a lot of motivational speakers talk about. I mean, if you're getting up to go to a job, you're in the wrong place. If you want to see a change. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have the locked down mentality, if you will, which is, I have to go make a paycheck. Yes, you need to provide for your family, whatever that needs to be, but there's always something better. Your eyes should be open to looking for something you actually want to do, I would think.
Right.
And then on the leadership side, you are the one with the open eyes going, look, I don't want you coming here if you're in a bad mood. You're going to affect everything else in the business. It's going to affect our bottom line. It's going to affect my ability to pay you. Why would you want to be that way? I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Yeah. And it needs to be a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
But over time, from the beginning of time, right? When you look at how work is introduced in the oldest book we've got, the Bible, right? It's a punishment.
Yeah.
And that you're going to have to work the land for your thing. And so we see it as a punishment. But if you look a little bit closer, and I'm certainly not a priest or a rabbi, but if you look a little bit closer, what you see very clear is that the other punishment is childbirth.
Yeah.
And yet we understand that childbirth is super painful, but also one of the most amazing, miraculous things in this world, and one of the most meaningful things in this world. Why are we not drawing the comparison with work, right? I mean, work, yes, it's painful, and there is beauty in that pain because you are serving your community.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think, but instead we now look at things through this other lens, that it's just about the paycheck, and it's just about financing our weekend and forget everything else.
That's one of the things that, we have a pooch who wants to get in on the podcast. It's awesome. What breed? Is it? It's all good. And we're back after that. We had a protest going on. Somebody didn't like Dave having the limelight there, so everybody's getting in on it.
120-pound Bernese Mountain Dog.
Oh my goodness!
He gets his way. He's not happy when he doesn't.
I think that's most dogs. Where are you putting me? But I love you. So much good. Okay. So when it comes to there's kind of a mirror, and I was thinking about this running through my head. There's a similarity of this type of mentality remanifesting in the new generations. Interestingly enough, I'm finding some parallels with how it was in the 70s. Now, I grew up in the 70s. So I wasn't in the workforce. I was a kid, but I remember movies around that. I remember seeing things in the news around that where people were going on a grind, and it was they called it the industrialist syndrome. I think I can't remember the total name or something. I'll probably get called out on it, and that's fine. Please do comment, say something. But when you get to a point where, and I guess this will lead into the burnout question. When you get to a point where you're now looking forward to the weekend, Gary Vee talks about this too. If you're living for the weekend, your life's messed up. You're in the wrong place.
Mhm.
You need to figure out something else. And for some people, that's starting their own business. For some people, that's finding a new job. For some people, it's taking a vacation. And even then, so if you're living to go on vacation, you're trying to take a break from your life. What kind of life is that? So I guess a good way to start is what would define burnout? What would the definition be today?
Right. So first, I think you're right regarding when you're just financing the weekend, when it is absolutely meaningless. And
Yes.
I study meaningfulness from a research perspective. What does meaningfulness actually mean?
Hmm.
And it's really interesting because meaningfulness is completeness,
Right.
right? And so what has always bothered me is that so many of us, I would gather to say the vast majority of us go to work and we clock out of life and clock into work.
Isn't that odd?
And it's sort of like putting it on pause. And
Yeah.
now that's the work me. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
You know, when you have people saying you should leave work at work and you should leave home at home,
Right.
if you have to leave either one anywhere, there's a problem. I would think.
Right.
I mean,
Right. The boomers tried that, right? The boomers
exactly.
wanted to be the best at everything. But they had this domain and that domain, and they were going to be the best at both. And the boomers also had the highest rate of divorce in human history. And I
Yep.
don't think that that's a coincidence. And so when you look at what people are calling work-life balance, what they called work-life balance then, and what people are calling work-life balance now, when you dig a little bit deeper, what these younger generations are asking for is not their parents or grandparents' work-life balance. It's work-life integration, right? Because now we've got these little, cell phones in our pocket that have all of the world's information on them,
Amazingly, they
and
live on it. It's crazy.
right, and you are connected. And so work follows you home, and home follows you to work. You can't escape it.
Do
And
you remember?
so,
Do you remember sorry to interrupt, but do you remember
no,
like
no,
back in the '90s when cell phones were, they were there, we
yeah,
had them, and company policies were no cell phones at work.
right, right.
How
You
ha-
can't do that
how
anymore.
how that's so totally evolved because technology has advanced us so far forward with that. The world is at your fingertips now.
Right.
That was if you remember, that was golly, whose motto was that? It was a tagline, the world at your fingertips, and it was a computer company. And I can't remember who it was,
Yeah.
but that was at a computer. Now it's on this phone. And
Yeah.
like you said, work-life integration versus, work-life balance, of which there never was any. I don't know who came up with that one. I thought the first time I heard, well, you need to balance your work and your life. I'm like,
Right.
how the hell do you do that when you got to go clock in someplace, punch a clock, and then punch out and go home, and
Right.
then your house not expect you to be, a little burned from the day?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to use your energy somewhere. And there are so many demands in both arenas. And unless you're able to really turn it off when you leave, so if you're able to turn it off when you leave, if you're not able to turn it off when you leave work, you're not able to turn work off, then you shouldn't be expected to completely turn off your home life, your relationships, etc. when you go into work. And for forever there was that double standard, and it still exists in some places.
And I still don't understand that. Why do they still try to enforce that when they know that things have progressed so far that it's now life? It's not work life and home life.
Right.
So,
And the way we work has changed. The
yeah.
structure of work has changed.
Mhm.
Our technology has changed.
Mhm.
I talk a lot about vestigial structures.
Okay.
So I used to be a bio major until I took physics and organic chemistry, and then magically I wasn't. All my professors sort of came together and had an intervention, like maybe try the business school. And then of course my thing is accounting. I'm like, more numbers, but but in biology and anatomy and physiology, we talk a lot about vestigial structures, right? So
Okay.
basically through evolution, our skulls have changed, the shape of our skulls and the function of our skulls and jaws have changed, and yet we still have wisdom teeth, right? So wisdom
Isn't
teeth
that weird?
structure. And so what do wisdom teeth do? They get you expensive dentist bills and very painful procedures, right? And it's sort of a way of life now. Everybody goes through it. Within organizations, we have so many vestigial structures as well. So everybody is facing this telework thing, most companies and individuals within companies for the first time ever, right?
Right.
And they're trying to work from home. Why haven't they tried this before? Well, because before there was no structure. There was not the technology. You couldn't, the infrastructure wasn't there. Now it is. So why don't we do it now? Because we never did it before.
This is the old mentality that's been holding on. Now you're going to get me on a rant. This is the old mentality that's been holding since, I want to say, the mid to late 80s, when things started to shift. I literally remember the first time we had a Gateway. When Gateway first came out, and they had the black and white heifer cow boxes. You remember those?
Mm-hmm.
And AOL was the way we got to the internet.
Or Prodigy.
Oh yeah. And Netscape was the thing back then.
Yeah.
Nothing that we have now. When people started seeing that, oh, this is going to make things so good, this is going to revolutionize, blah blah blah, and it'll make work easier. And then I remember hearing the first thought of working from home came around, I want to say 93, 94. And every structure, no, we can't do it. We have no way to keep people accountable. We have no way to do this. We have no way to do that. And of course, the software programs weren't available back then. And then you got companies like Salesforce and Zoho and all these other things for the sales tracking. You have HubSpot for the marketing tracking. You have, I'm sure there's HR programs too. You have all this stuff that you can keep people accountable online, and you still have these old vestigial structures trying to hold on to the past by saying, well, no, we need you here so we can keep an eye on you. Why? You can keep an eye on them at home now. What the heck?
Right, but everything has shifted. Everything has changed, and I have this theory that in the back of many managers' mind is, what if I'm a vestigial structure, right? Because these managers now, if I am a micromanager type of manager, there's already some insecurity there.
Oh yeah.
I think that I have to earn my wage by doing instead of supporting, right? And if that's how I think I have to earn my wage, and I'm so insecure that I am in everybody else's work and always looking over shoulders and always checking in, then imagine if people can suddenly start going home, what's my role?
Yeah.
What's my role?
They almost feel like their worth isn't there anymore. Yeah, exactly. They lose their. So first off, there's the insecurity. They actually already have in my mind, they have in their mind a lack of self-worth. Mm-hmm. Because as a successful manager, you're able to delegate and leave parameters to work within, but leave the freedom for the person to perform at their utmost optimized level. Because now you're not, like you said, you're not looking over their shoulders. You're giving them the chance to take an action. Here's the directive. Here's where we're headed. This is what we need to do. Let's see what you can do. Even when I used to work with an angel investment firm. That was one of the things that I evaluated whenever I talked to a prospect was your team. How do they work together? And if I caught anything where one person was in complete control, and it was one of those deals where, yep, I say what goes and I delegate and I make sure everything gets done. And I'm like, how involved are you in that process? If I start hearing a lot of micromanaging, I make a suggestion. I say, you may want to open up a little more space for your team to move around and do things, because if they can cross collaborate, even though this one's in this department and that one's in that department, you have a greater chance for success because you're a startup.
Right.
I got any pushback, it was gone.
Smart.
And well, now that I know what the term is, vestigial structures have always been stuck, for lack of a better, descriptive term. And I think that the old, forgive me, boomers, but I'm gonna pick on you. The old guard only knows one way that works.
Right.
And why fix what's not broken? What's not realized is it's more broken from the outset when it first started, simply
Right.
because of the mentality of control versus freedom of creative thinking and solution creation. That makes sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. Who was it that said that it used to be that the smartest person in the room was the one with all the answers, and now we've evolved to a point where Siri has all the answers, and so the smartest person in the room is the person with all the best questions, right? And so expertise is not what it used to be. And so it really is about having these diverse teams, diverse in every way,
Yep.
that come together and can be so much smarter than any singular manager.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, is that the creativity that's now needed and is being seen more. I'm starting to see it more, thankfully, with the new generations. The millennials are coming along. Just kidding. And the new generation Z, of which my son's a part of, he's like just after the beginning of them. The way they work, and I've seen these kids when they study. If they study in groups, and it's an interesting thing. And they even had it in a study, an actual study where they watched this new generation. And what they do is it's really fun to watch. There'll be 3, 4, 5 of them. Some of them will start talking. One will get on the internet, or 2 will get on the internet, and they start pounding away on Google and start looking for stuff. And they, I've had conversations with my son. Now, my son's 18. He's pretty much secluded in his own room. He rarely comes out except to eat. Teenagers.
Right.
But when he comes out, if I start talking to him about a certain subject, I never really know just exactly how much he knows until I ask. And when I say, hey, have you seen this? Whatever subject. Oh, yeah, I've already seen that. Where do you see it? You're on the games all the time. He goes, no, I go online and I research too. I'm like, so what's your opinion? Or what have you found? And he tells me, and I look at him and I go, I couldn't come up with stuff that fast when I was his age. There was no way. And I look at it from the standpoint of, if we have the ability to allow the creativity to integrate with our work teams, where they can take an active interest in their project work or in the business. And this actually alludes to a very old book that I have a copy of. It's about that thick. And they talk about how you get the employee to take a vested stance in their work. Now, unfortunately, that one's more financial focused. If you help us make more money, you get a bigger bonus at the end of the year. It's back to that old structure. But the concept to me of, hey, this is a vested interest for all of us that you can take a part in. Not so much for the bottom line. Yeah, that's a company's thing. But for your bottom line in life, that you're not, you don't come to work looking to, just get stuff done and go home.
Right.
You're actually like, I need to talk to Lisa because I had this great idea last night. I need to run it by her. And you're not afraid to come in. Lisa's maybe 2 levels above you. You're not afraid to go into Lisa. Lisa has an open door and she's just like, hey, what's up? You dump it on the desk. She critically thinks it. You guys powwow about it a little bit. It might be a subject on the next meeting. It may be something to put on a back burner for now, but here we have your idea. valid idea. Maybe we'll try it. You know, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I think if more companies start taking that, and I'm assuming this is something that you're studying, that I hope I'm on the right path with this.
Yeah.
Does this sound right?
Yes, absolutely.
So
To have somebody's buy-in and collaboration is huge.
So when we're talking in the form of leadership, let's go back to Lisa. She's got, you know, the open door policy. Come talk to me at any time. What's his name from that used to own Zappos? Tony Shea was like that. I remember taking a tour at Zappos before they moved out of Green Valley, and literally in the middle of all of the work operation, they had 2 floors. The top floor was all their customer service. The bottom floor was all the admin. Tony's office was 1 desk back from the walkway.
I love it.
There were there were no walls. He was in an alleyway with one guy in front of him. That was the ambassador, and there was a clear walkway. You could go right behind the guy and go right to Tony's desk. This was a guy who got it. You know, when it comes to
absolutely.
this was somebody who's and he challenged some of the norms, the corporate structure and all that, the vestigial structure, if you will.
Right.
He challenged it. It worked to a degree. There were some challenges that they had to figure out because it was a culture shift. It was a huge culture shift within a corporate world.
Yeah.
He had a great degree of success, in my opinion, because of the fact that he left it open as a leader to say, it's not me, guys. It's you.
Right.
So when you talk about leadership, what do you tell people? Like, what do you tell the leaders of a company when they're challenged like this? Because more so now, after the last 4 or 5 months, I'm quite sure they're going to be seeing a ton more of these types of challenges come through because of all of the things that are going. How do you address that?
Right. So first of all, Tony Shea, I'm a humongous fan of his, and so many of us know his name, right? And we've read his book, and he's a superstar, but he's a guy who gave up control. He was not the look at me, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
It was complete servant leadership. So I think that there's this misunderstanding that in order to become get in those leadership roles, you sort of have to be the one in the spotlight. Look at me, boss. Hey, check this out. You know, and be the superstar. But once you're in leadership, you're no longer the one in the spotlight. You're the one controlling the spotlight, right?
Right.
And there's something lost in that because, first of all, so just within development of people, right? And who do we promote? We promote the superstar, and oftentimes we run into the Peter principle, where you promote people to their level of incompetence, right?
Yep,
so
exactly.
That salesperson, so you make them the sales manager. Never mind that what makes a great salesperson. Maybe somebody's super independent and aggressive and a lone cowboy, whatever it may be, right?
Yep.
And then what maybe makes a great sales manager? Somebody collaborative, supportive, a team player. So then you basically take your best salesperson and fire them because you are promoting them out of that role.
Right.
And then you hire, by promoting them into this role, you're promoting them into be a horrible manager.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think even when that's not what's at play, there's mentally this gymnastics of having to go from what makes me a star here is to be a star performer. What makes me a star here is to make a office full of star performers, right? And just be the one behind the scenes.
Yep. I think in the past, and I see, unfortunately, I still see this today, in a few industries where somebody that's a great producer is not a great manager. And I've got a few stories of different companies. And this is both at the low, mid, and high level. It doesn't matter where you go. You've got C-level guys that shouldn't be C-level guys. You've got EVPs and VPs that shouldn't be EVPs or VPs. And you've got these stars that are sitting on the bottom going, Jesus, this guy could steer the ship.
Right.
This is the guy that should be in charge, because they get it. They know where, first off. And then again, you have the danger of promoting somebody into their incompetence, because from the front line to the strategy room, it's two different mentalities.
Right.
You know, I'm battling on the front lines with an M1 Garand versus I'm battling in the back room with a map.
Right.
Two completely different places. So I think I think once you get to a point where you're going to promote a superstar, if that's the route you have to take, now comes the leadership role. Let me say that right. Now comes the leadership's role to develop the leadership in that superstar, if possible.
Right. They need to promote them correctly by looking at, you've got all of this data.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be looking at the person with the highest sales necessarily.
Correct.
Within your sales team. You should be looking for the ones who share the relevant, the valid knowledge, skills, and abilities for being a great manager. And oftentimes when we hire people externally and when we promote people internally, we miss the point and we don't even know what the job truly entails. So we start somewhere in the middle. And so then we bring people together, we bring somebody in and we have sort of this get to know you chat, right? External, it's the unstructured interview where we sit down and we talk to people. And when we do something like that, what are we learning about the person?
Exactly.
Well, we're learning whether they're really charismatic, but we're not learning anything about them, how conscientious they are, what sort of abilities they have. We're not learning any of those things. And by the way, the person that we promote or hire is also probably going to resemble me, because if I'm doing just an unstructured interview, then I'm probably going to have more in common with middle-aged white balding guys, because I'm a middle-aged white balding guy, right? And so when there is no structure to, or very minimal structure, I always see organizations where they've got, I once had a manager say, I know how to pick the best person. I know how to pick a person. If they don't push their chair in at the end of the interview, they're out of here.
Wow.
Like,
really?
What? Really?
Are you serious?
Yeah, that was her thing. She could tell everything she needed to tell. So we always indulge ourselves and think that we are great judges of character, but it doesn't matter if we're a great judge of character, right? Because in selection, so I have had many roommates over my life. The only one I'm still friends with is my wife. Because, but why? All of my roommates started off as friends, but that's because I knew that we were friends. I knew they were cool guys, like that we're gonna have a lot of fun, whatever. I didn't know whether they wash their dishes at the end of the night. I didn't know whether they pay their bills on time. I didn't know whether they partied late into the night. Those are the relevant questions. And
Correct.
So when we say, I'm a great judge of character, I'm going to go into this interview cold and figure it out, you end up with really poor results. And that's for promotion as well as selection. And that's where all of this begins. You know,
so when
begins.
So when you're looking at, because I love poking holes in this one. So when you start looking at the personality tests that some corporations have you take, how accurate are those things? I mean, some people go, oh, that's super accurate, and then they get the job, and then eventually they get fired because they burn out. Which is not something that I think is assessed well enough in any of those personality tests. But I mean, how relevant are those?
So I will not name any, because I've gotten in very heated discussions with people.
I'm sure.
Because I've stood in front of rooms of HR people, many of them who made money off of selling some of these tests.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
But and just cut holes, like I said, right in the test, and was not able to get out of there for like 2 hours because they were
goodness,
how wrong it was. And so I stopped talking about specific tests. However, what I can tell you is that most of the tests, if you've heard of a personality assessment, it's probably not one that's a favorite of actual IO psychologists, like actual testing experts and personality experts. Those tests are that are much more in line with that include like the Hogan. You know, basically we within the evidence-based world, we found that right now there's 5 sort of distinct pieces of personality that are pretty much innate and don't really change outside of trauma and things like that.
Right.
And so that's things like extroversion versus introversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, openness to experience, and what's the last one? Charisma, maybe? I might be missing the last one. So these are the ones. These are sort of the
those are the true. I was going to say those are the true benchmarks.
Right. And what I find living in a world that's, you know, I get on a lot of stages with a lot of motivational speakers, and a lot of them bring a ton of knowledge and research to it, and a lot of them don't. And whenever I hear somebody say always or never, that my bullshit meter starts going off. Because when you look at actual science, very few things are dichotomous, either that
Right.
or this or
Right.
that, right?
Right.
So
Correct.
some of these tests, you're either an extrovert or an introvert. That's BS. When I'm in front of crowds talking about selection, I ask for the extroverts to put their hands up because the introverts won't, right? So that's
Yeah, right.
and then I'll call on somebody and say, have you ever felt like the introvert in the world, in the room? And of course, they've got many examples of when
Oh,
they
sure.
were the introvert,
Oh,
because
sure.
we're not either or on anything.
We're a blend.
So many of the tests, it's just irresponsible to even use them for selection. And some of these tests tell you not to use them for selection or promotion. But even the ones that are geared towards selection or promotion, you are not to use those as a standalone test.
Yeah. There you go.
You use them as part of a broader package to get the full picture and to have a coaching conversation with the individual and sort of work things out with them.
So how often are you seeing that happen in structures that you consult with? Because for me, I'm an introverted extrovert. I'm an extroverted introvert. That's the term. So I'm the life of the party, but when the party's over, I got to get away from everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I have to go find some quiet time, just me. As it is when I work, my sometimes even here, I go out and I take a walk alone.
Yeah.
Because I need to get away from the energy. I'm kind of empathic, if you will.
Yeah.
So it becomes like in a crowd, I'm not good.
Right.
If I know the crowd, I'm good. But in a crowd of strangers, I'm not good. So how do you see any of this? Do you see corporate structures or any business structure? Are they starting to move towards a more comprehensive view of how to select for either bringing in someone new or promotion from within? What are you seeing?
So what I've seen with the small to medium businesses that I work with, many of them are just doing an unstructured interview. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 unstructured interviews, and that is it. With the larger organizations, as you get larger, oftentimes they will have a barrage of tools, but the final decision will then come down to the line manager. And the line manager will have a structured questionnaire in their hands. And I've sat there and watched them look at the thing, sort of, and then put it down, and then just ask whatever questions came to their mind because they know better. And because if the person doesn't pull in their chair, obviously they're a shitty person. You know, so even in these big organizations where it's happening, the line managers don't understand the value of it, and they think that it's taking away from their credibility and also knocking them down as many of them value themselves as great judges of character, and they think that this is for the dummies, the people who are not great judges of character, but they have a great whatever. And then our confirmation bias kicks in. So we remember all of the amazing people that we hired. We point to them, and I hired them. Anybody who like didn't work out, that's because they're just horrible and they tricked you. And but when we think about
you just proved that you're not that great a judge of character. The moment that comes up, it's just like, okay, so you're not perfect, is what you're saying. Oh, right. So we need to work on that.
We won't look at that. Those people, it's them. The great people, it's us. There's some great peer-reviewed research on managers taking credit for their best employees and passing off all blame for their worst employees. It's really interesting how that works.
Well, it's interesting to me too that you mentioned small to medium-sized businesses using the unstructured version, which to me makes a lot more sense, because if you can't get a good feeling of the person, 1, from your gut, 2, from your conversation, what makes you think they're going to be that good when they show up for work?
Right.
I mean, they might be there just for a job. You don't want a jobber in your company. If you're a startup or you're a small business and you're trying to grow, or if you're a small business and you plan on staying a small business and this person's more corporate minded, you got a bad match.
Right. So what is a structured interview though? A structured interview is figuring out what knowledge, skills, and abilities, and also you can work in questions about culture fit, right?
Yeah.
And you take all these questions and then you work them out what all these things that you're looking for. Who's the perfect candidate? And you take a look at this. And by the way, if you already have employees, there is a great way to take care of this. You put together a test or an interview or a validated personality assessment or whatever it is, and you still have to validate it within your workplace. So then you take it to your best and worst employees, not telling them who they are. When I come in as a consultant, I do this. I say, give me your 10 best employees or your 10 worst employees. I'll never reveal who's who, but I need to know who's who. And we give them all the same assessment and we see the differences. And then it's like, oh, then it starts becoming clear why things look this way, or why, notice how these people answer in this way and these people answer in this way. That's a tell that we never really realized.
And what would you suggest? And oh, by the way, for those of you listening to this, here's a bullet point for you. Culture. Go learn what it freaking means, because I can tell you right now, if you're trying to get into a company, it has a culture by default, whether you think there is one or not.
Yeah.
Any place that has more than 2 people working for somebody else, there is a culture. You need to understand how it works and whether or not you would actually fit in. That was one of Zappo's biggest things. Do you fit the culture? Do you fit their culture? And they
would bribe you to leave, right?
Yes, they would bribe you to leave. They'd be like, if you take this check, you don't have to. You can go. You don't have to take the job. And to my understanding, at the time, this was probably back in 07, I think, when they were still in Green Valley, 06, 07. To that date, they had one person take the check. One.
Wow.
One. So what does that tell you about the culture there? People knew the culture was a great place to be a part of. So again, bullet point, learn culture, understand what it means and where you might fit in and where you might not fit in before you make that application and waste time, yours or anybody else's. The other point that I wanted to make, and now that I went after culture, I'm going to have a brain fart here. The other point I think has to do with going back to leadership and how to integrate all of this. I got to run the gambit. When you're looking at it from the standpoint of a business owner in a larger corporate structure, and you have a manager, let's see if I can make this work. And you have a manager who's looking at hiring somebody new, and they do these unstructured, and they mix the culture, and they do all of these assessments. Oh, how often should you reassess in order to make sure that the culture is maintaining and thriving?
Right. Definitely. I mean, these pulse interviews are really important. These pulse surveys, right? Where we used to do the annual employee engagement survey, and a lot of companies still do that. But having pulse surveys go out, constantly being checking in with people. And by the way, anytime you ask a question, you better be ready to react to the answer. So I have a friend who went to a restaurant. The restaurateur comes out to the table and says, "How is everything?" He's making his rounds, right? Ladies, how is everything? And they say, "Well, actually, at the counter, the guy was a little rude. And then when we finally got our food, it was cold." And he starts saying, "That's impossible," and starts fighting them.
Oh,
it's like,
no.
Why the hell did you ask the question?
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
If you don't want the answer, don't ask the question. And so this friend of mine blasted the guy and the place on social media and said, "I'm not going back." And how many other people were affected by that message, right? We're talking about it in Nevada right now. So so that's very much when managers. So anytime I go into an organization, and there is usually an assessment piece to it. Right?
Sure.
Going out and asking people. And before I ever start going down that route, I explain to the business owner or manager or whoever my point of contact is, if I implement this, if I ask these questions, there's this concept called reactivity. People will start reacting just to the question itself. And they are going to assume that something is going to be taken care of based on this thing. So no pulse survey should ever go out. No engagement survey should ever go out without being followed up by a detailed memo from management. Here's what we heard, and here's what we're doing about it. If you miss that mark one time, the next time you give that survey,
nobody's gonna do it.
It's going to be radio silence, and only answered with anger.
Usually, and that's just because the people. it's being mirrored right now out in public, that people don't feel they're being heard.
Right. Right.
And
Yes.
if you're whether you have 2 employees or 10,000 employees, if you're not in some way acknowledging that that was not just some piece of paper or some quick survey for you to fill out on a form and now it sits in a back room and nobody gives a shit, you actually have interest in what the people that are a part of your culture are feeling, thinking, assessing, because they're assessing too. They take daily assessments when they get to work.
Right.
Jim looks like he's hurting. Lisa looks like she's about to go take a dump somewhere. You know, it's you have that happening within the culture, and the moment you ask them for their opinion, well, who gives a shit?
Right.
Versus, I gotta tell them about this, and they go ahead and they tell. That mark that you just mentioned, which is coming back and going, hey, we heard you guys. This is what we heard. Any one of them sees their comment in there, obviously anonymous if you're smart.
Right.
They'll look at that and go, oh, that was me. I wrote that. Oh shit, they heard it. Okay, cool. And then I would think that a continual follow-up, because you're laying out the strategy. This is what we're looking at doing. We may not be able to answer all of these, but here's where we think we can make the best moves right now.
Right.
And some of these will move on later. You know, that at least at that point, people feel they've been heard. And
Right.
as a leader, when you give credit to your other leaders, and this is something that I still see missing in some cases, when you as the leader, the CEO, the president, whatever the hell you are, come back and go, the rest of the management team has pointed out that all of these things are actually happening and they're quite relevant. I hear you. This is the strategy that we're laying out. Stay in touch with your manager to find out how things are progressing.
Right. Right.
1, you've shown you're not a micromanager. 2, you've shown you've got heart. 3, you've shown that there's some actual freedom to work because you've delegated rather than trying to do the iron fist grip. And you've made it easier for your culture to thrive, I would think. Is that what you're finding?
Absolutely. And you know, oftentimes those middle managers have it the worst, because it will be dictated to them what we need, this sort of culture, and we need to empower our people, and they are in the process being given no power, right? Being completely cut out. And so they have to translate the message. You know, as they say, shit rolls downhill though. So when they're treated a certain way, it doesn't matter what you're saying to them, they're going to start treating their employees like that.
The worst, in my opinion, this and a, $5.50 get you a cup at Starbucks. My opinion, the worst thing that a manager could possibly be forced to say, sorry, my hands are tied.
Yes.
That is the absolute worst thing. And I get a little upset over it and a little emotional about it, because I know over the years, there have been many people that have been forced to say that simply because they weren't given the leeway to make a call that they were better qualified to make than the president or the GM or the C-level. And I also know on the other side of that coin that I know some great leaders that are CEOs that you better make the choice. You know what's going on. I don't. I'm not there.
Right.
I need you to help this work. And they really enlist and get buy-in from their middle managers to go, hey, we all have to shine. You got to get your team to do this. But I can't. Okay. What is it that you're facing? And they strategize and they plan and they give them, they give relevant perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't get into what generations I think are most responsible for that. That's another conversation for another time. But I think when you have leaders that are more empowering and give the freedom and are open to the middle managers pushing back like that versus here's your marching orders, just go. And then what the hell did you do that for? Right. Which still happens to this day. I still hear it.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating. How do you change a culture like that? So, that you when you run into that kind of thing?
So the culture has to start with the values, and culture makes life easier for everyone and better for everyone.
Thank you for saying this out loud.
But if we have clear values and I understand them and I've internalized them. And it's not just repeating back these 5 values, 7 values, whatever. It's not the proverbial values written on the wall. It is what we live, and it is what we live and die by.
Southwest Airlines.
Then I never ever have to tell you what type of decision to make, because I just want you to be guided by the values. The values tell you what decision to make. So back in my ice cream parlor, I had very clear values. We were there to make people happy, to make the world a better place, to do the right thing, and to have an impact. So one day I wasn't there. I didn't have my cell phone. Imagine that, right? If you want your people to have work-life balance, then you better, or whatever we want to call it, you better live it as well, right?
Yep.
It's got to be safe to trust your people sometimes. So I had a customer walk in, and he was coming to pick up a cake for his grandmother's birthday.
Right.
He parked in an adjacent parking lot where these guys were vultures. They just had these like tow trucks just sitting at the edge of the parking lot.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
And it was a grocery store parking lot. So he parked there, went into the grocery store, put his stuff in the trunk, and then crossed over to come get some ice cream, or to come pick up the ice cream cake.
And they towed him?
He comes over, gets the cake, walks out. It's raining now. He's holding the bag, walking through the parking lot, can't find his car. Turns out it's towed, pouring rain. Bottom of the bag breaks open. His cake falls to the ground and smashes in the adjacent parking lot.
You're not kidding when you say vultures. That's horrible, dude.
Right. So this guy comes in, and he is super nice, not upset, not aggressive toward my people at all. But he says to the shift leader that was there, he said, "Hey, this happened, and I know I wasn't supposed to park there, but I went in there first, so I didn't think they told me whatever." He said, "I know you probably can't do anything, but if I buy a new cake, could you just write 'Happy Birthday, Grandma' on it again?"
Yeah, exactly.
This supervisor grabbed a new cake out of the freezer. She knew that those cakes cost us about, I forget what it was, $8. You know, she comped the cake. $8. We just sold them one for 35, and it cost us $8, so $16, right? She grabs the cake, writes on it. Then she puts the man and the cake in her car and drives him to her grandmother's house, to his grandmother's house, to the party.
That's culture.
That happened without me being available. I don't know that she even tried calling me. She made this decision based on our values. She made that decision.
So
that's what culture is.
That's a true reflection of a culture that is thriving, well, accepted, thriving, and profitable.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you that man told everybody and their brother, "You want a cake? You go over there, because this is what they did for me." That actually, that would have been a PR release right there, buddy. Just saying. Right. Just saying.
Missed opportunity.
Two examples for you of again where that stands out in my mind quite plainly. One no longer exists, unfortunately, because they're no longer around, and the management company is, but it belongs to a different culture now. When it was its own culture, the Ritz-Carlton, right. I actually worked for them back on Maui. Same style of values. Their employees were so empowered. If something went wrong, you didn't call the manager. You dealt with it right there. And their guests came to know that, if we have a problem with a meal, a room, a service, we can literally say, "Hey, this was, to me, wasn't right, wasn't good." I know that a lot of the hotels around here, when somebody says, "Hey, I ended up having to," like just recently, the dry cleaning didn't come back on time, so I ended up having to buy a $300 pair of pants from Joss Banks. I feel for you, but that's not our responsibility, sir. That would be the dry cleaners. The Ritz-Carlton, sir, be at your room in a little bit. I'm going to see what I can do. And I can almost guarantee you that guest would have been reimbursed.
Yeah.
Because even though it wasn't the company's fault, there was a service mishap. There was a miss. So Ritz-Carlton doesn't want their guests upset about the miss. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. It's our guests. We're going to take care of them. The other one's Southwest Airlines.
Mm-hmm.
Still to this day, their employees know the model. They know the values. Why? Because they love it.
Right.
It's a culture that you can love to be a part of. And it doesn't matter. And it's not just the flight attendants. You go down on the ramp, same story. Guys on the ramp are just as much involved and part of the culture as the flight attendants, the captains, and the agents. Their agents, I've noticed that, like, the difference between me walking up to a Southwest Airlines desk and a forgive me, you guys, United, Delta, any of them,
Right.
any of them. Southwest, nice. They're good. They're processing, and they've got their commuter deal, and they move fast. They try to do the best they can, but they always try to make you smile, or they always try to say something encouraging, or they try to make it a UX experience that's really worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's part of their values.
Right.
You know,
And why do literally celebrities and people with a ton of money who could be getting a nice, business class seat every time they flying Southwest? You see people on Southwest that you're like, why are you flying on the coach airline? It's because of the values and the service that comes from that.
Me personally, I think they're looking for that one guy that raps, or the comedian, one of those two. I know we've all seen those videos, but no, that's another part of their culture is they encourage entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trend coming out now is edutainment, which is now coming out for the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
We have to be entertaining with our marketing, but we have to be educational at the same time, because people are bored with just somebody who's just making a fool of themselves. They want to know what the hell's going on. So, okay. So back to leadership. When you're looking at, that's one. So making sure that the values are clear. I actually have, I work with a rice spirits company, and the CEO and I, we're always talking. It's not a huge company. It's a small batch deal. But one of the things that was brought up is, hey, have you guys established your values yet? I says, well, the values are the same as what grandma's values were. And the moment he says, so what are they? I went, oh shit, we need to sit down and go talk about this.
Right.
Because it's not clear on a video on our website.
Right.
It's clear in our heads, but nobody else knows that. Why would you buy my rice spirits? Just because purity and community and those kinds of values are part of our culture. The rest of our culture, our customers, they have no idea.
Right.
So building upon that, what other things do you think matter when it comes to effectively creating that culture?
So I think another piece of it is control, right? And this is also a big piece of the burnout picture, right?
Okay.
People need to be given autonomy. They need to be given decision control, and they need to feel like they're in the driver's seat to a certain extent. I was once taking giving a tour. I used to own a small tour company on those
Nice.
Segway scooters or whatever.
Nice. My buddy had one of those too. That's awesome.
Back when they were cool, before every kid has some gyroscope thing.
Whatever.
Going on that.
Yeah.
But, and by cool, I mean extremely nerdy.
Absolutely.
But,
Absolutely.
So we gave tours all around, and for me to learn the route, I would gather local politicians and celebrities and things like that. I'll give you the ride, you give me the tour.
Right.
Exactly. So I can learn as much about it as possible. So I'm taking a bunch of ex-mayors of this small town around this community, and we get to a cross light. And so I lean over my Segway and start pushing the walk button, and then we're waiting there for a couple more minutes, and I lean over again and push the walk button, and one of the mayors starts laughing. I said, "Why?" He said, "That doesn't do anything." I said, "What do you mean it doesn't do anything?" He said, "We had those installed when I was a mayor." He said, "I had a choice. I could either put them in and have them wired up so that they actually start a timer so that you could cross, or I could put them in and not have them wired and save the city $60,000 or something."
Oh my gosh.
So the question is, besides for the moral implications, the question is, why did he do it? Why did he spend $1 if it doesn't work?
Right.
But it's because I felt like I'm in control when I'm pushing that. So it actually has an impact, even if I'm not truly in the driver's seat. Me just feeling like I'm in the driver's seat, it gives me a sense of ownership and a sense of impact, and so I don't become as anxious or angry or upset that I'm waiting so long for the cross light because there's an action for me to do.
So
So
you brought a new definition to the term control at that point.
right.
It's,
Right, but
it becomes the placebo effect.
it's exactly the placebo effect. But what I would always do within my own management roles was any decision, even if it was already made, I would go out and talk to my people
Absolutely.
and get their input. And by the end, everybody felt like it was their decision. Sometimes it couldn't be their decision, but that
Right.
didn't matter because they needed to feel ownership of it.
Yeah,
right?
you have to be a part of it some way.
Right. And obviously to have an open mind, and you end up learning things and learning that, no, you're not the smartest guy in the room. It's actually this person who has served, 10 times the amount of customers or clients as you ever have.
Yep.
That actually knows everything. In this climate right now, so much of what's missing and so much of what's leading to burnout right now, et cetera, with this coronavirus is the uncertainty. You turn on the TV and you see politicians that are contradicting each other, and then you see politicians get up and contradict themselves in a single sentence. It's infuriating, and you don't feel like you have any control. And the leading precursor to depression is learned helplessness, right?
Yeah.
And that's this concept that whatever I do, I cannot control my fate. Right. And by the way, managers with this sort of mindset are the worst because they're so laissez-faire. They take no personal responsibility for anything because they can't control anything. But when we're feeling this huge level of uncertainty, the thing that managers and leaders need to do is they need to reach out and give something, even if it's just a button on a poll. Give them something where they feel like they have control over something in their lives.
Yep. I think that the term that is most wanted by humans is relevance.
Yeah, right.
If they don't feel relevant in what they're doing, depression and anxiety will come in quick. And during the whole quarantine thing, we saw that stat in anxiety, depression jump.
Right.
Because people that were at home doing nothing. And the only thing they had was the home life, the work-life integration or the work-life balance, whatever you call it, was no longer there.
Right.
I mean, of course, the joke that was always coming, like, I went home, I met this woman, said so was my wife, seemed like a nice person. You get that joke running around, but you still have that kind of anxiety buildup when you're not doing what you're used to. Your routine's obviously been interrupted pretty badly, but you're also looking at the fact that I don't get to do the thing that I was hired to do. I don't get to provide for my family. I don't get to. Right. I would think any wise leader, like, I know that there's a hotel casino down the street from me called Green Valley Ranch. The hotel manager was reaching out to every employee by text and by email. Hey, how you doing? I'm like, Are you serious? We're closed down and you're reaching out? It's like, yeah, I want to make sure everybody's cool.
Right.
That is somebody that needs to be a director.
And by the way, that's as valuable for that leader as it is for any of the employees that he calls.
Intensely, because they get to, like you said, it's a pulse check.
That's their sense of purpose.
Yeah, that's their sense of purpose. It's a pulse check for them. They know what's going on. They know what to expect when they come back.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that I any leaders that do that, by the way, that are listening to this, I applaud you. Please keep doing it. Don't stop. It's amazingly priceless for your employees, the people that are part of your culture. If you want to call them your family. Right. But I don't think there's enough of that yet.
Right.
And leading post-COVID, what other pieces of advice would you say are most important for a leader to take into consideration, like right now, because things are starting to open again? So what would you say would be the best piece of advice you could give them?
Don't expect things to be normal right away. You need to offer support. And there's this idea that you come to work and now you're at work, like we talked about, and that could be a very dangerous idea sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're scared to poke beyond that. I know
that's almost a tinderbox if you think about it. I mean,
right. And for COVID, that's true. I was on a call the other day where this young African-American woman said to me, She said, I went to work the other day and my manager did not mention anything about Ferguson uh, Ferguson.
Where?
No, I'm the man Floyd. Floyd.
Minneapolis.
Yes, it didn't mention anything about Floyd. It didn't mention anything. Didn't ask her if she's okay and whatever. And as an old white guy, I understood the manager, like, because we are taught, as
You don't bring up racial issues at work.
with it, right? In business, no, I don't see color, and
Yeah.
that's what we're supposed to do. But this is different. There's a whole human here, and this human is going through trauma.
Yep.
For you to not check in is irresponsible. Not for you to check in isn't the insensitive thing. For you to not check in and just say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
That's the responsible thing to do. And and not just with your employees of color, with everybody about this issue and about Corona in general. Nothing in the world feels okay right now, and many people are. I'm blessed. I live in a little bubble with my kids that distract me all that. But some people are much closer to these issues and much more affected than to these issues than others.
Oh yeah.
And if you want the privilege of calling yourself a leader, then be a leader.
Yeah.
And that's understanding the whole human. And it's not starting a whole long conversations, which many people don't want and feel as awkward as you to have them.
Right.
But bring it up. Just say, "I'm here for you." Like, ask how somebody's doing and show them that support. That's that emotional support that they so need. But also, organizations should be building into their infrastructure, into their culture. They need to have avenues for their employees to show support for each other.
Yeah.
And there's so many great technologies that allow you to do that, allow you to give kudos to people and things like that. But give people space to do those things and give them the support, give them a sense of purpose and a sense of autonomy. And then the final thing is to cut back on those vestigial structures and look at your policies, both written and unwritten, and figure out why they're there. And if your only answer is because they've always been there, then get rid of them. Get rid of them.
Yeah. What some people have mistaken is that if it isn't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
If you're already if in many cases, not all, if that's the reaction, it's already broken.
Yes.
A company is not a piece of paper that you write down something once. It's a dynamic organization that changes. So therefore, the culture will change. Whether you like it or not as a leader, the culture is going to change. Like this whole thing of just being able to touch. Two examples. The first one being the doctor. When the doctor takes your pulse, or the nurse, excuse me, when the nurse takes your pulse, she puts a bag around your arm and puts her stethoscope on your right here, your elbow, or this one.
Right.
And that's when I was a personal trainer. This is how we took pulses, or like this. And the point of that is, I don't need to know what's going on with the rest of your body. I just want to make sure that you're all right. I want to make sure that you got a pulse for one, and that it's not too fast and it's not too slow. It's not too hard. It's not too soft that I can't feel it. This as a leader is insanely valuable, because the more you do that, the easier it is for that person to go, well, they care. They care.
Right.
The other example, brain fart again. The other example has to do with the same idea, is being that dynamic leader allows you to see past the specific issue. In other words, like what happened in Minneapolis. There's a lot of information rolling around about that. And no, we don't want to get into a long drawn out conversation, but checking in with somebody. Oh, a suggestion. That was the other one. A suggestion for leaders, for those that can. And I would say within the sphere of influence that you manage. In other words, and if it's set up right, you've only got as many as, 4 or 5. But to send one a note every once in a while, 2 levels below you if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lisa, give me the list of emails in your department. Why? Well, you don't have more than 10. I want to send out a note to one of them, and only to that one person. And it doesn't have to be this long drawn out, hey, you're wonderful, blah, blah, blah. It's just, hey, I want to tell you I appreciate you. Without you, this culture wouldn't exist and this company wouldn't run. Thank you for what you do. The amount of pride, I guess, in the culture and in themselves, what that does to somebody when they go home. CEO sent me a note today. I didn't even think he knew who I was.
Right.
Well, president or manager acknowledged something that, I thought it was trivial, but apparently it matters.
Yeah.
It matters at every given second. So the more we do that, like what you suggest, I think continues to get the buy-in, and it makes it easier for future buy-in, even when things are tough.
Yeah. I mean, how many people do you know who were furloughed? When I'm talking to people who are furloughed, some of them understand, or at least they say they completely understand, whatever. I've had a lot of conversations recently with people saying, I was furloughed, but so-and-so wasn't. I thought they respected my work better than that. And then in times like this, we do a lot of sense making.
Sure.
And meaning making.
Yep.
And we try to like process all of this.
Right.
And those conversations are happening inside our heads and between us as employees.
Yep.
And if managers are not entering that conversation, those conversations are happening anyway.
Yep.
The more information you can give right now, the better. If there's a system to figure out why certain people are furloughed and others, which there probably should be to protect yourself as an employer.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
system should be made known, right? But even more so, people are going to come back and they're going to feel expendable. If you laid people off, we know this about layoff survivors guilt. That the survivors, the people who remain in the organization, the people who were never laid off, the ones who should be bowing at your feet and saying, oh yeah, thank you so much for keeping me, or having the self-esteem to say, I was worth keeping.
Right.
That's not how it works.
Nope.
We look at your behaviors and we look how you laid those people off, and now we feel insecure. I know somebody who left the company 4 years after a merger and acquisition, which came with a bunch of layoffs, because he harbored the animosity toward the company all of that time since that layoff. And by the way, when so much of my business comes to me because of turnover, and I always say the only thing more dangerous than high turnover, or more costly rather than high turnover, is when those people are not turning over.
Right.
If you have high burnout and people are not leading, and you don't have to look further than the legal industry for this. Large law firms, very low turnover, very high in terms of depression, drug abuse, all sorts of infidelity, all sorts of things that come with people who are not finding meaning in their work, right?
Yep.
And so now is the time to be reaching out to people and over communicating and showing your gratitude and letting them know how much you value them. And for the people who you are laying off, those people need to be given a path. You need to be there for them. You can't just cut and run and say, well, clearly it's the economy, clearly it's COVID. No. That's not going to get you off the hook. If your people who survive see that you put together a job fair for those people, or that you're writing references for them, that you're mentoring them, that you're bringing in resume writers for them, then the people who survive, now, instead of burning your trust with them, you are building your trust with them.
Yeah, I think in my work life history, when I worked in the hospitality industry, I remember leaving one of the properties because there was just nobody was moving, and there was nowhere for me to go up. I remember the AGM, excuse me, and I having a conversation in his office, and he says, I was giving my 2 weeks notice, and he's like, "This really sucks. You're one of our best managers." I'm like, "There's nowhere to go, dude. What am I supposed to do? I can't sit here and keep making the same money." And he's like, "I understand. I totally get it." He says, "You put me down as a reference on any jobs that you go for. I'm writing you a recommendation." And he wasn't the most visible to us, but he knew what I did, and he knew my work ethic, and he knew how much I was dedicated to the department I was running. And it was just like, yeah, dude, it's going to suck. You're leaving, and I know who's next in line. And as much as you guys have brought the department forward, you and your former boss, the next kid's not going to be half as effective as you. And I'm like, well, don't tell him that, but, raise him up. He goes, no, we're going to put him through training and stuff like that. But you came to us with work ethic, and you changed the department that had no work ethic into one that does.
Right.
So you have my support. That's the kind of stuff that matters. One last question for burnout. As an employee, what are the signs? How do you deal with it?
Yeah, so burnout stands on three legs.
Okay.
Emotional exhaustion, which
Mhm.
is often understood as exhaustion, but in reality, it's emotional exhaustion. It can then you can then start to have physical signs. Headache, sleepy all the time, stomach aches. All those things can sort of come from this added stress and burnout. But in reality, it's a very specific type of exhaustion, which starts with that emotional exhaustion and
Right.
comes from those barriers in your work that
Yeah.
stand between you and your work.
Right.
The second piece is cynicism or depersonalization.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
and when we talk about burnout, originally it started in the areas of social work and medicine and things like that. So what we first started noticing about burnout in those times was that people would start pulling themselves away from their patients. And so we thought, oh, it must be those patient interactions that are burning people out. No. This is, you are cynical about your job already.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now you're pulling yourself away from your patients and even if it's not patient facing now, because burnout affects everybody, it's any of that cynicism where you now don't believe in the work anymore. And then the last part is a decreased sense of personal accomplishment. You start to feel like you're spinning your wheels and nothing's being done. And oftentimes your productivity is suffering because now you're exhausted and cynical, and it's going to happen. And other times it's that you just don't see it. So a lot of times personal accomplishment, you'll have that like flip of the switch when when we come in to an organization, we don't just give we don't just do the bare minimum. I've
Right.
never hired somebody who I thought was going to do the bare minimum and stick to the job description.
Right.
Anybody worth hiring and keeping, somebody who's going to go above and beyond. So we
Sure.
go above and beyond. And when our managers we don't feel like we are getting our managers are showing the gratitude that we're going above and beyond, even though we're not doing it for that. We're martyring ourselves, right?
Right, exactly.
We're going to do it. And
Yep.
they don't have to give me anything in exchange besides for my pay and bonuses
Right.
and whatever they promise me. But one day you look to the right and you see that Nancy is doing the same exact job as you are. She's got the same title, but she's doing half the work and getting the same pay. Or you look and say, I'm doing all of this, and what? They give me a pizza party once a quarter? Like, where's my Christmas card, right?
Right, exactly. With my bonus, please.
Exactly. So those are the three biggies. That emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and lack of personal accomplishment. And it's just this idea that you need to get away. You need to you're done with this work.
Is that the point when you should start considering that, or is it some, what else, what can somebody do once they recognize any one of these three? Because it's these look like they all lean on each other. So if one's in place, there's some degree of the other two, I'm assuming.
Right.
I can't see that not happening.
Right. Yes. So most people, when they come and they talk about burnout, most people in my space will start talking about resiliency, right?
Yeah.
Resilience. I personally talk about resilience to a degree because it is very important to be healthy, to get out, to give yourselves breaks, to exercise, all of these things, stress relief in whatever way. All that stuff is important. Setting up boundaries is extremely important.
Yeah.
But what I find is, and I'm in good company because one of the founding researchers on burnout, Christina Maslach, she has written papers to this extent that we have put we concentrate too much on resilience. And in a lot of ways, that's victim shaming or victim blaming, right? It's like telling the girl it's her fault for wearing the short skirt, right? We're saying we're gonna abuse the heck out of you, and then we're gonna teach you how to take it. And there's a problem with that. This
isn't the Marines. What are you doing? This isn't the Marines of the Army. They're not a drill sergeant. What the heck?
Right. There's the problem with that. But what do we have in our arsenal? So probably a good half, if not more, of my speaking engagements
Right.
are speaking to employees, not
Yeah.
just
Yeah. I would
managers.
think. I would think so.
Don't talk about resilience with them, except for only as a small piece of it. But what I talk about is, and the title of one of my talks is building a kinder kind of workplace, right?
Nice.
Be the change you want to see, right?
Sure.
That you don't need an official title to be a leader. This is one of the huge misnomers that you need to be called manager to be a manager. In my entire career, I've had so many employees come to me and ask to become a manager, and my response would always be, become a manager and then I'll give you the title. Because once you have the power, then I'll give you the title that gives you that legitimate power. But the legitimate power is the weakest form of power, you know? Really, it's you know, this, when you're a leader, you'll know it. But
it's internal. It always starts with the inside first. If you can't lead yourself, how do you expect to lead others?
Exactly. And so being able to regulate your own emotions and to be able to go out and be a positive change, having a positive outlook. You know, we have these mirror neurons that fire off, that we practice mimicry as humans, right? As
we do.
We do this. And it's so impactful, because if you are going in and with this positive attitude, then other people will greet you with the same positive attitude. We think there's so much power in answering somebody else's sassiness back to them, right? And I always say to people, you know what you're being a dummy. It's like a ventriloquist doll is a dummy, you know, like you pull the arm and then the arm goes up and then you pull the other thing and right? Stop being a dummy. If you are just meeting everybody where they are, exactly where they are, so they come at you with this high energy and they're upset and then you greet them right up there, and I'm gonna defend my honor. No, you're not being honorable by doing that. You're being a dummy by doing
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Real power,
I agree,
is by allowing them to do that, and then keeping your calm and keeping your positivity. And then things will begin to change around you drastically.
Yeah, you're always in control of your own environment. And when I say your own environment, everybody thinks, well, my environment's everything around. No. Your own environment starts in here. And I'm pointing to my head, which means your brain. For those that are listening on the podcast, I forget sometimes that we're putting this on audio. But this is where your environment starts. If this environment is messed up, everything outside is going to be messed up. I don't care how pretty it could be the most beautiful place in the world. If this environment is messed up, you could be in the most zen space possible on the planet. It will not change. It will not help. Right. This has to be taken care of first. I completely agree. You're going to love this. We've gone an hour and a half, my friend.
Oh man.
and I tell you right now, I don't want to stop. However, people got jobs. They got to get back to you.
Yeah. And we've been drinking a lot of coffee.
You know what? Yes. And not that I'm afraid. Are you afraid? We have caffeine doesn't hurt you until after the 25th cup. Just saying.
25. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Don't get close to it. It's not pretty. So, for one, thanks, David. The insights here, I'm sure, are just, they're going to be really eye-opening for a few of my listeners, very encouraging for many others. I think for the most part, you've probably validated a whole bunch of people that have been wondering about a few of these subjects on burnout and on environment and leadership. I'd love to have you back to talk more about other stuff too, because this has been an easy conversation. I love these. Like I said, we could probably go for another hour. We need to wrap it up. Let me ask you one last thing. Obviously, you have your company Illuminate. You personally, as a business owner, out of all of the successes that you have, and to have gotten to where you're at now, what's your biggest challenge that you're dealing with right
now? So Corona has been a big challenge.
Of course,
all of my consulting gigs sort of went on pause.
Yeah. So did ours, trust me.
Right. Most of my speaking gigs kind of, some of them went virtual, but many of them were canceled or rescheduled. So there's always these challenges, but small business ownership and entrepreneurship, to me, it's like a roller coaster. And
yes, it is.
I'm excited about every ebb and flow. My grandfather used to say that life is a never-ending circle.
Yep.
So when you're on top, never be too haughty.
Yeah.
And when you're on bottom, never despair, because
Yeah,
you
exactly.
will always be in the next position.
Yep.
And so I'm big on controlling my controllables. And so this has been an amazing opportunity to be doing more of these with you and other podcasts, and to be with my kids. And, you know, like I said, I've got 5 of them. I think I've got all their names down now. You know, it's really given me some opportunity for bonding with them. And it's just been a beautiful time. Now, if I was so focused on the things that were out of my control, many of the things out of my control are kind of scary right now.
Oh, sure.
But all the things that are in my control are really, really beautiful elements.
That's amazing.
To be able to work on my business and to meet people like you and to be there with my family has been really amazing.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I may have some thoughts for you, and I'll share them with you on email later. Thank you very much for coming and spending time with us. There's those allergies again. Thanks for having a cup of coffee with me. I really appreciate the time. If there's anything that we can do for you over here, please let us know. For those of you that are watching, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I have to always watch them in a mirror. And if you're listening on Anchor or any of the other syndicated platforms, make sure you subscribe or download, and leave a remark, leave a comment. I mean, share your experiences, guys. This is meant to be interactive. Dave's gonna get a link to the main spot, so YouTube and Anchor. So if you got a question, hit it. You know, he'll check once in a while, and if there's a relevant answer, I'm sure he'll answer. That's it for Java Chat today. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening. Remember, take care of each other. Be loving, be kind, and make sure you stay up, stay healthy, stay safe. From both of us to all of you, thanks for joining us. This is Java Chat. Ciao for now.
Thanks so much.